I never knew this popular guy was so good with kids, but can he help me take care of my little sister? I hate you! I should have gone with Dad! I woke up to my beloved little sister yelling at me from the foot of my bed. For a 12-year-old, she had an impressive set of lungs. With a sigh, I sat up and rubbed the sleepiness out of my eyes. What is it, Fey? There was one more cup of yogurt in the fridge last night. It was supposed to be mine, Josh. Mine, and you went and ate it without even asking me. Fey's dark eyes glittered with angry tears. I had to stop myself from sighing again. In the 1 week since she had started living with me, Fey had proclaimed her hatred for me a total of 4 times. Right, I'm sorry, I muttered. I'll get you another one when I head to the store later, alright? At that, Fey relaxed. She heaved a sigh of her own, crossing her arms. Fine. Can you get me some other stuff too? Go ahead and give me a list, I grumbled, pulling myself out of bed. As I did, I checked the time. What the heck, it was only 6 o'clock. It was a Saturday. What kind of kid woke up early on a Saturday on purpose? Pleased Fey turned and bounced out of the room. I watched her rubbing a hand over my face tiredly. This was going to take some getting used to. Several months ago, my father had contacted me for the first time in years to tell me he was leaving the country for business, and since he couldn't take her, he would need someone to watch my sister Fey while he was gone. Since my mother was deceased, I was the only person he trusted her with. Why? I had no idea. Fey and I didn't even know each other that well. I had moved out of our family home when she'd been a baby. Our interactions up until a week ago had been limited to FaceTime calls and family gatherings. But now she had moved in, and I was so extremely out of my element. My apartment was spacious enough for her, but despite being so small, she had such an enormous presence I didn't know what to do with her. When I stepped out of my room and towards the kitchen, I passed by Fey in the living room. She had made the living room her domain. Barbie dolls and sparkly clothes were strewn all over my carpet. It was nothing but a load of girly crap to me, but I wouldn't dare say that to her face. The last time I dared to suggest she might be a little too old to be playing with dolls, she'd launched into a rant about how she used them as inspiration for fashion and how sexist I was. Fey herself was in front of the TV, her eyes' attention glued to the screen as she munched on a bowl of cereal. Curiously, I paused to see what she was watching. Fey had an intense interest in fashion, and it was obvious down to the kinds of things she watched. Currently, she was on YouTube watching her modeling and gossip channels. Beautiful androgynous men and women in shiny, eccentric clothing posed and pouted on screen, while the voice of a girl that might have been Fey's age gave excited commentary. I rolled my eyes and was about to walk past when I spotted a familiar face. He was exceptionally beautiful with cat-like eyes and flawless dark skin that reflected the lights around him. Fey leaned forward when he popped up, enraptured. Adrian Wilson. I blinked in surprise. I recognized him, but not because I was into this stuff. I knew him because he lived in the apartment directly opposite mine. He hadn't been home for several weeks, but I knew the guy. I knew him enough to know he was a major snob. But of course, his fans wouldn't know that. Or so I thought. Right before the footage on screen changed to a video, there I saw Adrian screaming at a young woman who seemed to be a fan of his. I said stay away, you're too close. Don't you have any idea what personal space is? Followed by a series of beeps as he declined into curses. The voiceover resumed to explain the situation. This video has since gone viral and Adrian's reputation is in trouble. Will he ever be able to recover from this? Keep watching my channel for more updates. I scoffed. He's way too pretty to be acting like that. The words slipped from my mouth before I could stop them. Right? Excitedly, Fey turned to face me. Wait, do you like Adrian Wilson? Not wanting her to think I was into all that fashion stuff, I quickly shook my head. No, I've just seen his face a few times. I entered the kitchen. Just 'cause I'm gay doesn't mean I'm into men like him. Personally, I don't see the point in liking men who don't look or act like real men. Fey yelled words at me that I didn't hear. I simply rolled my eyes. After a quick breakfast and shower, I headed to the front door. I'm leaving, I told her. You'd better give me that list of yours now. Quick as a sprite, Fey was at my side, holding a piece of paper out to me. I picked it up, scanned through it, and froze as a single item on the list caught my eye. Make sure to get everything on there, okay? Fey instructed me before heading to her room. Before I could say anything, dread built up in me. 10 minutes later. There I stood in the store. I couldn't help but wonder how I must have looked to everyone around me. This fully grown, rugged man standing right in the middle of the feminine hygiene section. I never felt so embarrassed in my life. I hadn't even considered that Fey would have me buying her pads. She'd given me the exact size and brand she wanted, but there were so many of them I didn't even know what to pick. I was just about to call her to ask when someone stepped up beside me. I turned and came face to face with none other than Adrian Wilson. In contrast to how he looked in the video I had just watched, Adrian's face was completely bare of makeup or cosmetics, giving him a somewhat refreshing look. His thick, long locks were held up in a bun. "What are you doing here, Josh? Practically quivering in the pads aisle, you stand out like a sore thumb, honey." The amusement in his voice made me blush. "Oh, look who's back from getting cancelled," I retorted. Adrian frowned. "How do you know about that?" "I have my sources. What do you want?" "I saw you and thought I'd come and say hi." He gestured to his cart nearby full of groceries. "You're buying for someone, aren't you?" The quirk of his lips told me he was entertained by my discomfort. I glowered at him. "What does that matter?" "I can help. Are you looking for a specific brand?" Not wanting to say it out loud, I simply showed him the list. To my surprise, he located the exact pack in a second and tossed it over to me. "I pity whatever girl has to send you out to buy her pads," he laughed, before turning and grabbing his cart. Then he disappeared into another aisle. I glared after him. This was how most of our conversations went. He acted like he was better than everyone, but it seemed like that had finally come back to bite him. I wondered what kind of insane PR stunt he would have to pull to fix his ruined reputation. Smirking to myself in satisfaction, I went to check out. Later that evening, once I returned to Fey with everything she'd requested, her anger was forgotten. She insisted that we take a walk because I never got any fresh air, according to her. Well, I worked from home, so she wasn't wrong. I concluded, even though I really didn't want to. Our walk was forgotten as we stepped outside and saw an expensive car pull up in front of the building. I pursed my lips, already knowing it was Adrian before he stepped out. With him was an older woman, blonde, in a suit. He and I made eye contact, and then Faye shrieked. "Oh my God!" She bounded towards him, startling him into taking a few steps back. "You're Adrian Wilson! Josh!" She turned back to me, beaming. "He's freaking Adrian Wilson!" "I know that," I responded. "He lives in this building right across from us." "What?" Adrian's brow furrowed. The woman beside him quickly put a hand on his shoulder as if to calm him down, before crouching down slightly to Faye's level. "Hi there, darling. Are you a fan?" "A big fan," Faye bounced on the spot. "A huge fan." The woman chuckled. "Aren't you just the cutest? Do you have anything he can sign?" As Faye quickly rummaged through her backpack for something, I walked up to them. "Sorry for my sister," I apologized. "She's just really into all this fashion stuff." "Is she?" The woman hummed, her tone curious. "You said y'all live in this building?" "We're neighbors," Adrian spoke up, looking a little uncomfortable as Faye shoved her diary in his direction along with her sparkly pen. Glancing up at me, he continued. "I didn't know you had a sister." "She's going to be living with me from now on," I smirked. "You'd best get used to her." Adrian tried to hide his displaced expression as he signed Faye's book. "Who am I making this out to, honey?" "Faye," she responded excitedly. Just then the blonde woman spoke up, looking between Faye and me with a wide smile. "Mr. Josh? Miss Faye? I've got a proposal for the both of y'all if you're willing to hear me out." The woman, who was named Candy, apparently was Adrian's manager, and she wanted us to help him out with his current predicament. What better way to improve his image after he was seen being mean to a fan than to have him pictured making a young fan's dream come true? I immediately thought it would be way too obvious of a publicity stunt, but according to Candy, stuff like that worked. As for what the actual dream would be, Faye had a school dance coming up and was dead set on designing her own outfit. I had thought this to be impossible, but if Adrian and his team were involved, they'd be able to bring whatever design Faye thought up could be brought to life. "Just picture it," Candy said as she pitched the idea to us. Little Faye in her dress, grinning from ear to ear. We take a few pictures and boom, an image with enough sweetness to give the tooth fairy diabetes. Faye was thrilled by the idea. Adrian and I, not so much. But of course, Adrian knew he had to solve his problem. As for me, I needed a bit more convincing. "Oh, don't worry, sir," Candy said with a wide businesswoman-like smile. "Both of you and your sister will be compensated handsomely for this." My eyes nearly popped out of my head when I heard just how much money we'd get paid. Maybe it would be worth it to spend more time with Adrian, even though goodness knew I wanted as little to do with him as possible. The next day. And so, from the next day, Faye and I got involved in Adrian Wilson's big PR stunt. We met at Candy's office to decide on what Fey would wear. She showed up with a big binder filled with her clothing designs. As I sat and listened to her excitedly explain all the dresses she had drawn, I found myself badly wishing I could just disappear. Seriously, what was the appeal of all this girly stuff anyway? I just hoped my boredom wasn't showing on my face. "What do you think, Mr. Wilson?" she asked Adrian, showing him a drawing. I watched Adrian, expecting him to act in his usual aloof way. I was surprised to see him actually lean in with interest to see what Fey had drawn. "This isn't bad," he said, grabbing a pencil. "But we can make some adjustments here, and maybe here?" The two were soon exchanging ideas in earnest on how to make the dress look better. For some reason, Adrian seemed to be a natural at coming down to Fey's level to talk to her. He was so cold and aloof to adults that I thought he would be even worse with kids, but it was starting to look like the exact opposite. Fey listened eagerly. Once Adrian finished, Fey turned the drawing to me. "What do you think, Josh?" she asked. I looked at the dress. It honestly didn't look that bad. I opened my mouth to say so when I noticed Adrian watching me. I hesitated. "It's alright, I guess," I finally said, looking away. "You know, I'm not really into this stuff." I didn't need to look at Fey's face to know she was glaring at me. "You know, you can at least pretend to care sometimes," she complained, suddenly getting up. "I'm going to the bathroom." With that proclamation, she stormed off. Adrian smirked at me. "Great going, big bro." I rolled my eyes. "Mind your business. She and I just started living together. I'm still figuring this whole sister thing out." Adrian looked confused. I explained the situation to him. "Ah, I understand now. Sorry to tell you this, but you're not going to get far with her if you don't get over the phobia you have for anything remotely feminine," he said, flipping through Fey's designs. "What's wrong with being a masculine guy?" I asked defensively. "Absolutely nothing, but I grew up with my dad and 5 younger sisters, Josh. I remember all the boy band concerts I had to attend with them just to make them happy. You've got to find a balance." I didn't like how preachy he sounded, even though I knew on some fundamental level he was probably right. I hated admitting that to myself, though. "Why not use this as an opportunity to get closer to her?" he suggested. "If you can help her with this dance thingy, you're bound to bond with her more." He paused before continuing. "I could help." I frowned. "Why would you do this?" "I don't know. Candy keeps telling me I have to be more compassionate and think about people more, or whatever. What's a better way to show my boundless compassion than to help a situation as hopeless as yours?" I clicked my tongue in irritation. Even when he was offering help, he sounded like such a jerk about it. Adrian's gaze softened slightly. "Well, there's that, and she reminds me a lot of my own sisters. She's got so much energy," he chuckled. "Most of them are all big girls now, though. They've barely got time for their big brother." I was surprised to see the look of genuine fondness in his eyes. Adrian was beautiful. There was no denying that, but since he was a model, I had always seen it as this plastic, superficial attractiveness. For the first time, I could really see it, the warmth in his gaze, the way his lips curled as he smiled. He really, really loved his sisters, didn't he? And for all her quirks, I loved Fey. "Fine, then," I said. "I'll consider your advice, but I'm not putting on a dress or anything like that." Adrian snorted. "You'd look horrible in one anyway." Days passed. As always, Fey's anger was forgotten when something new showed up to make her happy. In this case, by the time they settled on a design, the fun part started. Taking measurements, looking for fabrics, and shopping for accessories while the dress was being made. "We're paying for everything," Candy said, "so please go all out." It looked like this was going to form a bit of a dent in Adrian's pocket. He frowned, but he didn't say anything. Fey's dance was in 2 months. The days passed by like a whirlwind. I worked during the day while Fey was at school, and once I picked her up, we met up with Adrian. Then we went to fancy stores to look at bags, jewelry, and shoes. It really was a dream come true for her. Not so much for me, though, seeing as I had no good advice or opinions to give when it came to fashion. I was given the role of carrying all the stuff they bought. Well, I was fine with that as long as they weren't making me look at sparkly shoes. Adrian himself seemed to enjoy spending time with Fey. He really did seem more like a big brother than I did. "Let's try this set," he said, fixing a pair of simple earrings and a necklace on Fey. She turned to look at herself in the mirror and squealed in delight. "I love them! Let's get these ones!" I was vaguely listening to their conversation while scrolling through my phone. Adrian cleared his throat and I looked up to see him staring at me expectantly. "What do you think, Josh?" he asked. I looked down at Fey. The silver necklace and earrings really did look good on her. To put it frankly, she looked adorable. She watched me with those big eyes of hers waiting for my opinion. I felt my heart soften. You look really pretty, Fey, I managed to say. I got the pleasure of watching her grin from ear to ear. Then let's get this set, she said, as she carefully took it off and put it back in its box. Adrian stepped up beside me and nudged me. See? You did it, he hummed, grinning. That wasn't so hard, was it? Look how happy she got. I sighed softly. Yeah, I said, but I couldn't stop the smile that spread on my own face. As we stepped out of the mall, we were approached by a group of young women. Just from their vibe, I could tell they were approaching Adrian specifically. Fans, without a doubt. I wondered just how popular this guy was. Hi, you're Adrian Wilson, aren't you? One of them asked. I love your style and I watch your videos all the time. I love the way you think. I noticed Adrian stiffen as soon as he realized they were fans. Oh, thank you. They were soon practically crowded around him. Faye and I had to step back to give them space. Is it okay if we take a picture with you? Another girl asked eagerly. Yeah, that'd be awesome. I watched as Adrian's discomfort became more and more obvious, but he was clearly trying to choke it down, probably wanting to avoid a repeat of what had happened with the fan that he blew up at. He made eye contact with me, and his words were written plainly on his face. Help me. Sorry, ladies, I interrupted, forcefully interjecting myself into the crowd. They parted for me, looking at me in surprise. But Mr. Wilson is a little busy right now, but if you want a picture, settle down and strike a pose. The girls had expressions ranging from confusion and mild annoyance, but most of all, they were watching me and Faye curiously, probably wondering who we were. Still, they followed my instructions, arranging themselves. I grabbed Adrian by the arm and guided him to stand in the middle. Then, moving quickly because I could practically sense the discomfort rolling off him, I took a few pictures with one of the girls' phones. There we go. I handed it back to her. They looked even more confused now, looking like they were about to start asking questions, but I moved before they could. Without saying anything else, I steered a grateful-looking Adrian away from them and towards the car waiting for us. Excited, Faye walked ahead of us. Adrian looked over at me, and the relief was written all over his features. Such a genuine expression on his face was rare. It was such an oddly pleasant sight that I couldn't help but smile. Thank you, he said. Don't mention it. Suddenly, Faye tripped, nearly falling over. Both Adrian and I reached out to steady her, grabbing each of her hands to lift her. Then, with each of her hands in ours, we led her over to the car. By the time we reached the apartment, the sun had started to set. Faye had fallen asleep in the car. Since my arms were occupied with our shopping, Adrian helped to lift Faye out of the car. She slept soundly in his arms, and to my surprise, he had little trouble carrying her. When he noticed me staring, he raised a brow. What is it? I'm just surprised you can carry her, I said. Adrian rolled his eyes. Josh, I'm not sure if you're trying to imply that she's heavy or that you thought I'd be weaker. The second one, I almost said, but something about the way Adrian was glaring at me made me reconsider saying that out loud. Sorry, I mumbled. We headed up the stairs in silence. I thought back to what happened at the mall and glanced over at him. What was that about? I asked. You'd think someone as famous as you would be better at dealing with fans. What? Oh, Adrian frowned. I'm not a fan of people getting all up in my space like that. We reached my apartment. I fished my keys out of my pocket and unlocked the door. We headed inside together. So why'd you become famous in the first place? I asked, leading him to Faye's room. Once there, I set her things on the ground. As if sensing she was home, she stirred in his arms. He set her down, and still mostly asleep, she slipped off her shoes and climbed into her bed. It just kind of happened, he said quietly. As we stepped into the hallway, I flicked on the light, illuminating the both of us just in time for me to see a crease form between his brows. I was posting my content online a few years ago, and overnight it just kind of blew up. I mostly just wanted to share myself online, and it became a whole different thing entirely. As we headed into the living room, he chuckled. If you haven't noticed, I'm not exactly a people person. Shocker! Adrian's gaze lingered on Faye's stuff still strewn on the carpet. I watched as he went and picked up the pieces of paper she had left lying around, scanning her drawings. You don't seem so bad now, though, I said. I thought you were just a stuck-up celebrity. And I thought you were just a meathead, but it turns out you actually do have feelings, so I guess I was wrong about you too. Oh, come on. There's no way you thought I didn't have feelings. Everyone has feelings, it just seems like you're afraid of yours sometimes. He stood up from where he had been crouched on the ground and came to stand right in front of me. Or afraid of looking weak or weird or something, and I know you think I am. I don't, I instinctively defended myself. Maybe not anymore, but you did. I'm good at reading how people feel about me, you know? I glanced away from that penetrating gaze of his. As much as I wanted to deny it, he wasn't wrong, but for him to see right through me so easily, it felt like I was on display. I felt like I owed him some kind of explanation. Well, I shrugged. I'm sorry, I guess. I'm just kind of... I don't know, I was probably the only openly gay kid growing up back home, and I got a lot of crap for it. I had to act a certain way just to get people to leave me alone. The vulnerability felt weird, foreign. I had never opened up to anyone about this stuff before, and I certainly never expected I would tell Adrian of all people. He simply listened quietly before saying, I get that, but you'll probably have to work on that if you want a better relationship with Fey. I met his eyes again. He was staring at me with the same soft look I had seen before, and it made my heart squeeze in my chest. It was like something in me was violently trying to reject him being so close to me and speaking so gently to me, but at the same time, I couldn't move. I know that, I finally managed to get out. Well, acknowledging that you need to change is the first step, so good luck with that. You're gonna need it. With a chuckle, he handed me Faye's stuff before turning. With that, he walked over to the door and left. Now on my own, it felt like I was finally able to breathe. I sat on my couch and found myself mulling over his words. As much as she was a handful and a bit of a headache sometimes, I cared for my sister. She was my responsibility, and unless anything changed anytime soon, I was responsible for essentially raising her. So maybe some changes were needed, for her sake. Weeks later. After another several weeks of fittings and adjustments, Faye's dream dress was ready, much to her delight. It was a dark green sequin dress, a mermaid dress apparently, with frills at the bottom that somehow looked like sea foam. It was a good balance between mature and age-appropriate. Even before the day of the dance, pictures that people had taken of Adrian, myself, and Fey had already started circulating online. By the time the evening of the dance arrived, rumors had started to spread that we were a couple. They think we're married and I have a secret daughter or something, he said, laughing. We were in my living room waiting for Fey to finish dressing up so I could drive her to school. I laughed awkwardly. I was wearing a suit. Both Candy and Fey had insisted that I dress the part of her chaperone. Part of me really didn't want to do it, but it was just a night. I decided to try to make the sacrifice. Adrian kept glancing at me. I knew he wanted to say something. Okay, how weird do I look? I finally asked. What do you mean? I mean, this. I don't wear suits a lot. I imagine I probably look stupid right now. Adrian snorted. I mean, you don't look bad, he said. I raised my brows. You think? Yeah, I mean, he hesitated for a moment. You're actually pretty good looking when you dress up. I briefly remembered the day I had complimented Fey, and she had gotten so happy. I suddenly understood how she felt. It was a weird feeling. I remember what I had said to Fey just 2 months ago about how I couldn't find a man like Adrian attractive. Over the past several weeks, though, as I saw a different side to him, I felt drawn to him, like he was magnetic. I had no idea what to do with these feelings. Thanks, I said. I can't wait to get out of it, though. Adrian laughed again. He shifted closer, reaching out with both hands to adjust my tie. Just make sure not to ruin it, alright? It's a rental, he mumbled. I'm not a kid, man. I'm not going to ruin it. Still smiling, he made eye contact with me as he finished up with my tie. His gaze lingered on my face. I realized he was so close I could smell the gum he had just chewed on his breath. My jaw clenched. I didn't know when exactly we were even closer to each other or who had leaned in first. I only realized how close we were when the door to Faye's room suddenly opened and we jumped back away from each other. I'm ready, she called out, entering the living room. She paused when she saw us, looking between Adrian and me with a suspicious gaze. What's wrong? Nothing, I quickly said, getting up and grabbing my car keys off the nearby coffee table. Let's go before it gets too late. Faye still looked suspicious, but she shrugged it off and followed me as I walked over to the door. Adrian followed as well, his expression a little unreadable. I wish I could read his mind just to know if it was as restless as mine. As we parted and he went to enter his apartment, he smiled at us. Have a good time. Hours later, I was not having a good time. After dropping Faye off, all I could do was sit in the car and wait for her. The dance was meant to go on for 4 hours, and it was only 1. I was bored out of my mind, but I couldn't just leave. What if something happened and she needed me? So there I sat in my car bored. Then came a knock at the passenger side window. When I turned, I saw Adrian standing outside. Surprised, I unlocked the door. He opened it and slid into the seat, 2 paper cups of coffee in his hand. "What are you doing here?" I asked, blinking. "Thought you'd be bored. I am too, so I figured I'd come keep you company." He handed me one of the cups. I took a sip and cringed. "Ew, black?" He raised a brow. "No good?" "Hell no, way too bitter." Adrian snickered, offering his cup. "Sorry for assuming. Let's switch then." We swapped cups. The coffee in the other cup was sufficiently sweet, so I didn't complain. I watched out of the corner of my eye as Adrian's lips closed around the spot I had just drank from. I looked away. "So, this is it?" I said. "What is what?" he asked. "You guys are going to take photos together after this, right? And then that's that. You pay us, and we go back to just being neighbors." I tried to say it as casually as possible, but I could sense a trace of sadness in my own voice. "I don't think Fey is going to be so eager to leave me alone," Adrian said. Then, after a moment, he asked, "Are you?" I leaned back in my seat with a sigh. "Well, no," I admitted. "Is that why you tried to kiss me earlier?" Shocked, I looked back at Adrian. He was earnestly waiting for my response. "I did not." "Yes, you did," Adrian smiled. "It's okay. I did too." I nervously drummed my fingers against the cup. "Can I kiss you?" The words were out of my mouth before I could stop them. The entire time I had been sitting in that car, my mind had kept going back to that moment. I felt like if I didn't at least acknowledge what I was feeling, it would never stop weighing on my mind. Adrian sat up and shifted closer to me. "Well, I didn't come here just to give you coffee." We both fell silent as we leaned in and carefully, experimentally kissed. Well, it was careful at first, but it felt so right that I soon lost every ounce of hesitation. I could taste the black coffee on his lips. I decided that that was the only way I could stand that taste. After a few seconds, we pulled away from each other. There was a moment of silence as we looked into each other's eyes. "Still bored?" Adrian mumbled. "Oh, definitely," I smiled. "Bored out of my damn mind." Adrian chuckled. "Let's fix that then." He closed the space between us once again. Once we were done kissing, about 15 minutes later, Adrian and I spent the rest of the evening in the car chatting and sharing stories about each other. Before I knew it, the dance was over and Faye stepped outside, pleasantly surprised when she saw Adrian in there with me. Adrian had been right, of course. Faye would not be happy if after this we just went back to being neighbors who barely talked to each other. But something told me that wasn't going to be the case at all. Conclusion. Despite being an obvious PR stunt, it worked. Just like Candy said it would. Once the pictures of Adrian and Faye in her dress hit the internet, people were gushing over how cute they were. After that, Adrian and I continued to spend time together, exploring the attraction that was there. Within a couple of months, we were dating, much to Faye's approval. The three of us grew closer until our bond was practically unbreakable. The end. Have you ever had to confront and challenge your own biases before? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force, and stay wholesome.